Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Andy, a refreshing twist today. We get to talk about a Russell that isn't Westbrook. That's next on Locked On Lakers.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen, your very first listen before you listen to your wives or your husbands or your children of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how you get your podcasts or where.
Even your side pieces.
Anyone. Do not listen to anyone before making us your first listen of every day. Never behind a paywall, always free. Locked On Lakers on YouTube. You get the visual product. You get to see all of it. You get to have a little bit of fun. We do fun things on the YouTube version at the Locked On Lakers YouTube channel, for example. And you also get it early. We tend to post a couple hours before the audio product, particularly on non-game nights. Want to remind everyone, Dewar, D-U-E-R, they are the makers of the most comfortable pants and shirts that you're going to find on this or any other planet. And we will be there at the Dewar store, 170 South La Brea, on Saturday, August 27th at 11 a.m. If you can get there, you have a chance to participate in the show, win some prizes. If you can't, you can still participate in our mailbag show that we'll be recording from the Dewar store just by sending us questions either on Twitter at Cam Brothers or on the Locked On Lakers YouTube page with the hashtag Dewar Show, hashtag DUERSHOW. Get a chance to win yourself some really good prize packs there and some great clothes. And if you just want to shop there, shopdewar.com. Locked On 15 is the code. Get yourself a discount. So Kyrie Irving was tweeting today in incredibly annoying and insufferable ways that we will talk about because they're actually relevant to this whole notion of bringing Kyrie to your team. But before we get to that, big news from the NBA. They announced on Thursday that Bill Russell would be honored league-wide in a few ways. First, the league would be retiring the number 6. So nobody else coming into the league, and we'll get to that in a second, will ever wear that number again. Players who are currently wearing it are grandfathered in. They can continue to if they choose. That obviously would include LeBron James, which is a topic we're going to get to in a minute here. The league will also have, everybody will wear jersey patches with that number 6 for Bill Russell. And near the scorer's table in every arena, there'll be a shamrock, I think, presumably with a number 6 in it.
There is a number 6 in it.
I haven't seen the picture. So like to honor Russell, not surprising. Major League Baseball did something like this with Jackie Robinson in 42. Certainly nobody you could think of in NBA history is more worthy of this type of honor than Bill Russell. But sometimes, Andy, even news that is expected is still cool to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it is impossible to overstate the significance of Bill Russell's impact as a player and the way he shaped the NBA. Just his presence was the beginning of the league becoming more integrated, but also what he meant, away from the game, as an active player, as an activist, as somebody who had to deal with a lot of racism along the lines of Jackie Robinson when he broke the color line. And then after the game, there were a lot of great remembrances of Bill Russell after his passing. One off the top of my head, I highly recommend people read, was by Howard Bryant for ESPN. Terrific writer under any circumstances, but he happens to be from Boston and really understands the Bill Russell legacy as well as anybody. It's a no-brainer that you would do this, a no-brainer that he could be the first that this would happen. What really, though, lets you know that you're talking about a one-of-one type person, Brian, is the idea that Bill Russell's significance was enough, so great, so widespread, so profound, that the Lakers will have a shamrock with a number 6 on their court and that I imagine the Lakers did not argue, and I imagine that the league did not feel awkward asking the Lakers about this.
No,
because,
but like, can you imagine like actually like trying to argue that though? Like, can we just make ours a circle?
Well, here's the thing though. I mean, we saw some reaction on Twitter at Cam Brothers upon tweeting out this news, and across the board, every single Laker fan that we heard from agreed with the patches, agreed with retiring the number. They all understood that, and they understood Bill Russell's legacy. They also understood Bill Russell and Kobe were tight,
right? And Russell showed incredible respect. He wore it was the iconic photo now, really, of Russell wearing the Kobe jersey, wearing the Lakers hat in honor of Kobe.
The shamrock on the court, however, did not sit well with everybody. Did not. The reaction to that was, shall we say, mixed. This was an interesting tweet that we, or I guess exchange that we saw on our timeline from Eraserface, who's been a very active member of our Twitter community. Also, we've used some of his questions in our mailbags. I'm good with the patches. The C's wore Kobe patches too. That's customary, all for honoring the legends. Lots of ways to do it. Putting a clover on Laker hardwood feels ... icky. Can't get with that. If just his number name, that's one thing. Why does it have to be a clover too? Fishing _W _Fredo. Nice Godfather 2 reference. Agreed. I don't know who sport that clover have a lot in common with Bill Russell. The man was all about the obvious reference to Boston's racial histories and all the effort Bill Russell did fighting it, and some of the crap that Bill Russell took along the way. Eraserface responds, I mean, yeah, that's fair. For me, it's just about straight up base level sports hate for the Celtics. We can be mature enough to honor the legend of that man while still being petty enough to cling to our rivalries as sacred.
What I love about that is, like, ultimately our friend Eraserface understands the right thing to do is the tribute with the shamrock and like the grown up in you, the adult level. But I'm glad he used the word petty because, as particularly in this kind of exchange, it really does remind you both of kind of what is important about sports, recognizing the social significance of things and all that, recognizing the incredible, profound impact that sports can have on society and sports figures can have on society, while also recognizing kind of what makes them fun, what makes them enjoyable is, as he says, incredibly petty things like a moment of, oh, come on, a shamrock when you're honoring Bill Russell on your court. Like, I get it. Like, we're all grown-ups here. We're all going to do the right thing. But I kind of respect the petty. And it just gives you an idea of how deep this Celtics thing is. It's like the time Sasha Vujacic once yelled at me because I was wearing a green shirt in their locker room. To which I was like, Sasha, I'm a grown up. I'm not excising a color from my wardrobe because you guys, hate the Celtics and it's green. Men basically have like two colors that they wear frequently, green and blue. I'm not cutting 50% of that, but like, that's what this rivalry is. And I think in some ways, even Bill Russell would respect Eraserface's reaction to this.
Oh, absolutely. Although really, the Lakers simply cannot pull off being the one team in the league that puts that 6 in a circle while everybody else has a clover. Like, you just can't do that. It's bad manners.
Okay.
It's really bad.
How about a nice oval? Anybody, the bigger question, Andy, one bigger question, as we mentioned, the league says, if you are a person wearing number 6 now, if that is your assigned number, and players have already made these choices for going into the year. And last year, according to Basketball Reference, 25 players were assigned the number 6. Some of whom are prominent, some of whom are less so. But obviously LeBron is one of them. So if you were LeBron, would you keep wearing number 6? That's my question for you. Next. Andy, I wonder if you could even bet on whether or not LeBron James would keep that number. And if you could, it'll be over there with our friends at betonline.net because it's the fastest and easiest way to check on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, combat sports, esports, even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, whether that's live in-game betting, scores, podcasts, all of it. They've got you covered. Head on to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening every day because BetOnline is where the game starts. So obviously, Andy, LeBron James is somebody with a deep respect for Bill Russell, for basketball history, for questions of racial equity and justice that were so critical to Bill Russell's legacy. He wears number 6. We haven't, the news is fresh, obviously. He could clarify this stuff at some point soon, probably will. But like, what would you do?
Hopefully not, though, but until like the weekend, just for the sake of this podcast.
But if he could wait until Saturday afternoon at the least, that would be helpful. What would you do if you were him?
I would change my number. I mean, first of all, if you're LeBron, you've changed your number like 4 or 5 times as it is. What's one more? And I would dare say, if this is the one time you don't change your number, it's a bad look. Like, and like you said, I'm sure it has nothing to do with LeBron disrespecting the legacy intentionally of Bill Russell. It could just be him feeling, I don't feel like changing it again. Like, this is not the right time.
I don't want to get into like the arcane stuff about like the rules about when you can change your number, this or that or whatever. I'm sure the NBA would make exceptions for players who want to change if it's past the deadline.
Absolutely.
The devil's advocate argument to that I would make, that I would ask you about is, could you, somebody like LeBron, there's an argument to be made that you could wear it for a year as a tribute to Bill Russell, as an honor,
That's
or
true.
something like that, because you care so deeply and were so moved by his legacy that you would want to wear it in honor of him for a year or something like that.
Okay,
that was what popped into my mind as the argument for.
I had not thought about it that way. That's actually a pretty compelling case. And if LeBron expressly says that he wants to do this for one more season, really paying a proper tribute to Bill Russell, then changing his number, that's totally okay. I'm just saying this is the wrong year to just say, you know what? I don't feel like changing my number again. Like, just because I don't feel like it. It's the wrong. When you're LeBron and you've done this so many times as it is, it's just the wrong year to not do it for no particular reason.
Do you think he will? Again, hoping that he doesn't answer this question between now and say Saturday.
Yeah, I think he's going to. If I had to guess, I think he will. Probably goes back to 23 again, because
I mean, he's only been it's 23-6, 23-6. So
right. So, and I was on, and this is going to come up later in our discussion. I was on 710 ESPN LA today in Los Angeles, and we were thinking about different numbers LeBron could go to, and this just speaks to the greatness of the Lakers, like trying to come up with different combinations to represent 6. Can't go 24.
Nope.
Can't go 33.
Nope.
Can't go 42.
Nope.
And obviously you can't go 15. That's Reeves. So unless LeBron wants to go 51 or the ultra rare 06, he's kind of out of ways to represent 6 without changing his number.
It's an interesting, like, the other thing that I thought was really funny about this is, like, as I assume that he will at some point change numbers as well, somebody with the acute understanding that LeBron has of history and what it means to set that number aside. I don't remember what happened when Major League Baseball retired 42 for Jackie Robinson. Like,
Mariano Rivera wore his through the rest of his career.
Right. So like different guys handle it in different ways.
I think Mo Vaughn also wore his for a while.
Okay. If LeBron gives it up, Like everybody else in the league who wears 42 has to do the same, right? Like you can't be Jalen McDaniels on Charlotte and keep your number. After LeBron gives up, Kevin Pangos can't be like, sorry, Bill Russell, sorry, LeBron. I just like the number.
No,
Alex Caruso.
Yeah, Alex Caruso is a number 6.
Fresh.
Kristaps Porzingis is a number 6. Like, those guys probably are going to feel pretty sheepish if LeBron changes it, and they're like, "No, I'm good."
But I suspect most guys, if they're able to, will probably switch numbers relatively soon. But LeBron doing it would kind of add a little pressure there.
Let me throw out. There was an interesting discussion. I'd mentioned that I was on 710 ESPN before we did this recording, and one of the people in studio with us was John Ireland, who's another host in LA, but he's also the radio play-by-play voice for the Lakers. And we were discussing this news about Russell, and he liked the idea of honoring Russell with the patches. Like, he liked the idea of just honoring Russell in general, but he wasn't sure about the idea of retiring the number just because across the league, because it opens the door for what do you do with other greats. And the example he offered was Kareem, and the idea of, when, if Kareem passes, or when Kareem passes, do you retire number 33 across the board? To which I said, yes. But Kareem,
sure.
Right. You certainly can. And, especially when you take into account Kareem specifically, his impact went well beyond the game, which is why Bill Russell is getting this. And it's important to remember. And John said, well, you're sort of opening Pandora's box with this in terms of, do you do it for this guy, not for this guy? To which I said, I'm not a slippery slope guy anyway, unless it's over stuff that's really important.
You've got 98. Let's say you retire Bill Russell and Kareem. You've got 98 other numbers to choose from.
And also, too, there are so few players that you can even have this conversation about to begin with. Like, when you think about all-time greats like Tim Duncan or Larry Bird or Shaq or Wilt, all just among the all-time greatest players ever, they're not going to come up in this conversation because their impact was not the same. Like the players that I threw out that maybe could come up with this, and I'm cool with these numbers being retired, by the way. Like you said, plenty of other numbers to go around.
It's fine.
Kareem.
Okay.
Magic. When you take into account what his life meant beyond the game and also in the game,
and I think his impact on Twitter.
Right. Yes. Magic, which is a big part of the NBA, by the way. Magic would certainly be in consideration. LeBron, maybe when it's all said and done, could be in this conversation. But then this was interesting. John asked about Kobe. And my initial response was, I don't think so, largely because Kobe's impact beyond the game was tragically cut short. Like, I think Kobe was actually on the road to being one of those guys where it felt like a no-brainer. But unfortunately, he died so young. But then I not surprised, I got some pushback on Twitter about these comments. And people talked about sort of like the overall magnitude of what Kobe meant to people and basketball culture, and also just sort of work ethic culture and inspiration. And then obviously he was looking to move into other spaces. And I kind of reached the conclusion of, I understand where people are coming from. He's an interesting borderline case that if you told me you would do this for Kobe, I wouldn't argue. If you told me you wouldn't do it with Kobe, I wouldn't argue. But I wanted to ask the question to you, because it's interesting.
It is.
And it's, by the way, it says something about Kobe that you would even have this conversation, because most players, the answer is an obvious no.
Yeah. Let's break. We'll do it next. So after giving it extensive thought during the commercial, it is an interesting. Let me start with Kareem, and I think, because I was sort of listening to your explanation of this through the entire conversation and piling up thoughts that actually become relevant for the last question about Kobe. Look, Kareem if you are going to make an argument for the greatest basketball player of all time, I'm not talking about the greatest NBA player, but the most successful basketball player going from high school to college to the pros and through all that, I think start that conversation with Kareem.
Absolutely.
So like there's an argument to be made there. What separates, and obviously he's been an important figure for the game, for social justice. He's written jazz books. He's makes
for many of the same
documentaries.
reasons this tribute is happening for Bill Russell.
Right. But the distinction is Russell was a person, I want to say the person, one of the people who laid that foundation
Sure.
for Kareem. First in many ways matters.
Yeah.
There are other people in baseball who had very important influences on the sort of the social arc of the sport and justice in that sport. There are other players who were monumentally impactful in terms of just how they changed the game or whatever it might be. It's that combination that made Jackie Robinson particular, and that part of that combination is firstness. Mm-hmm. And while Bill Russell didn't break the color barrier in the NBA, he was right there at the front of it.
He did a lot to push it forward,
right, and was monumentally important in terms of civil rights and all those things.
Yes.
in both in sports and beyond. Kareem is part of that legacy, so I think that is one way to answer John's question, to delineate between somebody like Kareem and somebody like Bill Russell. For me, I think that is part of that argument. When you start getting into players like Jordan, LeBron, and his impact, you want to take certain guys that are just so special, the 3 or 4 or 5 guys that are just so good that they, and retire their numbers. Okay, again, let's say you retire 10 guys like that. There are still 90 left that you can get. Even in Boston, they'd be where they have, in LA, where you have 700 retired numbers between both of those teams. You'd still find enough to fill out a 17-man roster. It would be okay. I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I would probably, my initial reaction would be no. Unless you really want to say, we want to open this up to other forms of honoring people for other reasons than we did specifically Bill Russell.
Right. Either way,
I think that could be kind of cool.
But
look, to whether it's Kobe, Kareem, LeBron, eventually, whoever it might be, there are certain players who reach that status. But my initial reaction was no, it's not the same thing.
Sure. I mean, and I don't necessarily need a definitive answer. Either way, though, and I think this is before we move on to Kyrie, like it's a tribute to Kobe. It's a tribute to LeBron. There were 6 people that got mentioned in this conversation: Russell, Kareem, Magic, LeBron, Kobe, Jordan. They're the only 6 that I can think of in NBA history that you would even
the Lakers.
Right. They're the only 6 that I think you would even consider having this conversation.
And I think the most compelling argument for those guys is Magic, because of the influence that he had, again, sort of socially and off the court, around HIV. In terms of caliber of player, we're talking about,
right. Again,
they're all in the same
guys like
stratosphere.
Tim Duncan, Shaq, West.
No, you're not having that conversation.
Right. Exactly.
There's no slippery slope there.
Right. That was my point too, John.
Let's do this real quick, because it's probably best we not get to. So Kyrie, can you help me with his? Is it just 11? Is that how you're supposed to say that?
Yes, it's 11.
Okay.
It's A11.
1, right. The two ones are L's.
Yes.
And then Evan 11.
Right. Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
His Twitter handle is A11 even, which is his way of spelling out 11, which is
probably also his Wi-Fi password.
It might be.
Because that would qualify as a secure password, especially if you threw like an exclamation point at the end. So on Thursday, he he busts this one out. When you're ready to break free from the media's control over your subconscious thoughts and emotions, that, by the way, is what we do here at Locked On Lakers. Meet me on one of my platforms and let's chop it up. We are the 11 tribe, love our conversations about the truth, all caps, and what is truly happening. Welcome to the all caps paradigm shift infinity symbol. Okay, two things. Just first of all, get over yourself. I good God, he's just self-absorbed and self-important, and the idea of a road trip with Kyrie Irving sounds like the worst possible thing you could ever come up with. But my annoyance at Kyrie aside, if you're the Lakers and you see stuff like this, what's your reaction?
I mean, look, first of all, I just want to commend Kyrie for offering a safe space for people to gather together and do and share their own research. Here's the thing, though. I mean, look, is the statement pretentious and silly? Yeah. I mean, although really, I'm not even sure because Kyrie shared no links or info to any of these platforms. Like they could be.
That's bad marketing.
It's still but I'm saying they could actually be incredible places for conversation and info, and I just don't know because he didn't tell me where to go. But
could be, but do you really think they are?
No, I doubt that they are. I'll be honest. This part of Kyrie bugs you more than it bugs me because, like, the reality is Draymond does his new media shtick all the time with his podcast and his comments to the press, and his new media isn't really that new other than who's talking. Like, he'll go on and on about silly hot take culture and old media, which, by the way, he's 100% correct about. Then he'll throw out that his 2022 Warriors would have beaten the 96 Bulls and feed the old media for hot takes. Like, he's a part of all of this stuff.
I get that. Sure.
And it's just as, in certain respects, silly and stupid as whatever Kyrie's doing. The difference is...
That's the part I would disagree with because I think sort of basic media hypocrisy, which is sort of what Draymond is engaging with, a little bit perhaps a slight lack, either intentionally or not so, of self-awareness.
It's 100% unintentional.
I find as a category of human being, I find I'm the only person who doesn't realize the rest of you that all of you guys have been red pilled. And I'm the only one who, I am among the people who see the truth, and together we can talk about it, like what's really happening. And that guy is one of my least favorite.
Oh, no. Look,
that's why I find him insufferable. And I find that different than Draymond.
Sure. And I'm not cheerleading for Kyrie's personality. I'm just saying, like, I think it bugs me less than it bugs you.
Okay. That's fine.
What is, however, the difference between Draymond and Kyrie and why it would be problematic for the Lakers is, as in certain respects, equally pretentious as Draymond is with his stuff. And these are both media spaces. That's the reason I made this comparison. Draymond's going to show up to work. I am very confident Draymond will show up to work. He's going to show up to games. I'm very confident Draymond wants to play basketball. I am not confident Kyrie wants to play basketball on a regular basis. So it raises the question of A, trading for him, B, how much you include in that trade, both first-round picks, and then C, does including both first-round picks landlock you into having to extend Kyrie to make it worth your while. And he is somebody that I would never, ever want to be in a long-term deal with. I think you are insane to do that.
I think that's the issue. It's like, because, like, to your point, if Kyrie had to choose between being, quote unquote, this guy, the counterculture guy, like the very smart, but the only person who sees the real truth while the sheeple go on buying about, and playing ball, I'm not sure which one he's going to choose, because this sort of performative thing seems to be incredibly important to him. And that might not mean he doesn't show up, like, all the time, but it might mean he needs a couple weeks off, to do X, Y, or Z, or whatever it might be. And that is a different. The Lakers and all teams risk being the dog that catches the car, so to speak, where you get a season of Kyrie where he really is sort of, as you know, on his best behavior and focused and all that,
which we both think he will be this
I agree.
coming season.
Because he, wants one more
Right.
max deal.
Yeah.
And then
weird,
like you say,
not crazy. Need to remember this. Not crazy, because he cares about money. If he didn't care about money, he'd be a Laker on a mid-level exception.
And by the way, I think they would have given him multiple years eating into their cap space for next season if Kyrie wanted that deal. I would not want to be the team that has to make that decision. And I particularly wouldn't want to do it after I just traded the final 2 assets that I have available to me through that I control through 2029 or whatever it is. So that is the big danger. And when I see tweets like that, it reminds me that, like, oh my God, like I had both on the one hand recognized like the Lakers kind of do need somebody like Kyrie, but it's like, oh Jesus, that's the guy. Like,
does it have to be Kyrie?
Does it have
they
to
need
be
someone like him? Does it have to be him?
Right. I mean, and this is right on the heels of the Westbrook thing. It's like, it's not. You always want to like your stars. You want to, as a fan, fans want to like their stars. Fans want to be able to embrace them. And while fans are desperate to get Russ out of town, I got a feeling they will tire very quickly of Kyrie's shtick too. So, Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you go to get the podcast and see it. Trevor Lane from Lakers Nation is going to join us on Monday's show. That's going to be a lot of fun. Excited to have him on. We haven't talked to Trevor in a little while, so that's pretty cool. And again, a reminder, August 27th, 11 a.m. at the Doer Shop on 170 South La Brea. Come join our show, participate, win some prizes. All that's going to be happening there, 11 a.m., 170 South La Brea. Everybody have a great weekend.